As the world continues to grapple with volatility, uncertainty, instability, and ambiguity, India remains resilient and focused towards growth and stability. Our ability to weather the storm can be attributed to the rich annals of our history. There's one name whose writings remain eternally relevant even today: Chanakya. A brilliant strategist, philosopher, and military advisor, he left an indelible mark on our nation's story. Chanakya's wisdom inspired the Indian Army and claws to come together to create a multinational platform, Chanakya Defence Dialogue. A platform that highlights India's strength and readiness. Bharat is moving towards centenary milestones. Holding the mantle of global leadership, it is ready to navigate not just regional but global security challenges. With a focus on cutting-edge technological solutions, driven by the spirit of Make in India, our defense sector has taken monumental strides in Atmanirbharta and fortifying India's position as a confident, self-reliant and determined nation. Join us in the spirit of Chanakya's legacy and wisdom as we commence the Chanakya Defence Dialogue 2023 with eminent speakers and domain experts from around the globe. Together, we strive for a safer, secure and more stable world. Chanakya Defence Dialogue 2023, collaborating for enduring peace and security. The world today is changing fast. Yet some things prevail stronger than change. Wisdom prevails. Wisdom guides. It leads the way and shows what's right. Blessed by the wisdom of the ancient philosopher Chanakya, a strategist with a keen eye for defense, the Indian Army and Claws is back with its second edition of the Chanakya Defence Dialogue 2024. The inaugural 2023 edition united top minds from across the world, shedding light on AI, big data and beyond. We set the tone for India's defence leadership with Atmanirbharta as the mantra. In the journey of nation building, we see a common dream where growth is fueled through comprehensive security. A secure nation, a secure region, a secure world where peace reigns. The biggest defense leaders, strategists and think tanks, assembled to strike a balance. Partnerships to technical know-how. Security, ecology, culture, and more. Together, we strive to put India on the road to fulfilling its dreams of Viksit Bharat. The time has come for India to take its seat as the Vishwa Bandhu and give the world a safer, secure and stable identity. Chanakya Defence Dialogue 2024. Drivers in nation building. Fueling growth through comprehensive security.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We're about to gear up for another interesting session coming your way. Once again, all the ones who've just entered inside the hall, please come forward, take your seats. That's how we'll make it even more interactive. I'm going to request everyone who's just entered inside the hall, please move forward. Please occupy those seats. Thank you so much. Well, ladies and gentlemen, on that note, we're about to gear up for the next session, and we do hope, while we're talking about fueling growth, we hope we have fueled ourselves enough to participate in our next session with a lot more energy and a lot more curiosity. That being said, let me also inform you that this panel will focus on how emerging technologies, when we talk about technologies such as AI, or for that matter, quantum computing, IoT, blockchain, how all of these can enhance security frameworks through improved threat detection, operational efficiencies, and data integrity, while also addressing new vulnerabilities and ethical challenges that these technologies introduce. That being said, let me firstly please introduce and invite our session chair and moderator. And our session chair will be responsible in extracting all the relevant perspectives from his panelists. Ladies and gentlemen, we have with us Lieutenant General Raj Shukla, PVSM, YSM, SM. He's been appointed as a member of the Union Public Service Commission in the year 2022. And let me also inform you that he brings a wealth of experience of more than 40 years. Can we have a wealthy round of experience for that, everyone? In fact, he's also commanded the Infantry Brigade in counterinsurgency operations, the Baramulla Division along the line of control, and a pivot corps along the western borders as well. So thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for being part of the discussion. With that, let me go ahead and also invite our speakers. We have with us a socio-technologist who is in fact serving as a mission director for the Atal Innovation Mission in India. He's on leave, in fact, from MIT, and splits his time between teaching and research at MIT and working with rural communities in India in order to build solutions for improving human conditions. We should all come together with a humane round of applause. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Chintan Vaishnav. Moving ahead, our next speaker, we have with us Brigadier General Iran Otal, who retired as the commander of the Dado Center for Multidisciplinary Military Thinking, and he's a well-known military thinker who has also published works in the Military Review, War on the Rocks, and Small Wars Journal, and he's currently a fellow at the Signal Group in Israel. Thank you so much for joining us. And our final speaker for the session, we have with us Mr. Dmitry Stefanovich, a research fellow at the Primakov National Research Institute of World Economy and International Relations. His research focuses on strategic weapons and disruptive technologies in international security. Ladies and gentlemen, let's all put together a big round of applause. Let's bring the energy back in the air as we welcome our panelists for another very, very interesting session there. With that, sir, over to you. Interesting session there. With that, sir, over to you. Yes.
Right, so friends, guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Good afternoon. Before I welcome you to this panel, and before I welcome you to this panel, this is the first time in my career that I've seen the first time in my career stay back for sessions. They normally come, give a keynote address, and return the next year for the keynote address. So this is extremely welcome. We are honored and delighted that General Dwivedi has chosen to stay back. Having said that, it's my pleasure to welcome you all to this panel. It's titled Blurring Frontiers. I'd rather say Converging Frontiers, because it's actually it's a fusion of national security and technology. And we really have to examine very dispassionately as to how real this phenomena is. Because if it is real, then we must act with zeal. And that is the real, the point. We have a very distinguished set of panelists. Dr. Chintan Vaishnav from the Niti Aayog. He's currently on leave from the MIT. Unfortunately, he tells me he's going to go back, so we lose his talent. But he's the mission director for the Atal Innovation Mission. He's the go-to man on innovation, and he will tell us as to how we could accelerate the innovation piece through our national security system. Because without innovation, national security is dead. We have Brigadier General Iran Ortal. We were together at lunch. I thought you were a captain, but you've turned out to be a Brigadier General. So he looks mighty young, but he's put up years of distinguished service in the IDF. He's commanded the Dado Centre for Multidisciplinary Thinking. He's a well-known military thinker, fellow of the Signals Group Israel, and his USP is the art and science of precisionry. So he'll tell us about precision-guided missions, how the Israelis hit anybody, anytime, anywhere. I mean, if I misspeak, perhaps a missile will come and land on my head. So that's what the Israelis do. Mr. Dmitry Stefanovich, Research Fellow at the Institute of World Economy and International Relations, IMEMO, at the Russian Academy of Sciences. He's going to speak to us about AI. I actually feel that AI is a technology in the wake of which the world is going to be reborn and remade. I mean, that's how critical it is. It has transformative potential, huge salience in national security, but I'm told that Dmitry will speak about the ethics, safety, and the other issues associated with AI. So how I propose to run this panel is that we'll kick off the discussion with 5 to 6 minutes of remarks by each one of us, moderator and the three panelists. Then I'll try and string the conversation together through a set of questions amongst ourselves. And, of course, before we turn to interventions from the floor, which is always the best part of any panel. So by way of opening remarks, let me make just a few points. The first point that I'd like to make is that the interplay between technology and national security is one of deep complexity, subtlety, and nuance. I really wish to emphasize this. Real strategic advantage, which translates to operational ascendancy and combat salience, seems to be lying at the intersect of course, cutting-edge technologies, but also innovation, which is disrupting the past, entrepreneurship, which is firing the startup system. In India, it's just about taken off. It needs to really fire, and cultural enablement, which is, surgical eradication of the tyranny of processes and procedures. I must hold out this book to you here, Unit X. This is a book by an Indian American who transformed this whole business of military innovation and technology, Raj Shah. This book must be read by every military officer in India because it talks of the partnership between Pentagon and Silicon Valley. Without a Silicon Valley, no transformation in technology is going to happen. So wherever it is in Bangalore or these two defense corridors, and this must be read by every IFA. Because the point that I make about these cultural transitions is this, that, defense bureaucracies are extremely important. But the challenge for them is to become creative. They have to change from this blocking everything to being creative, to facilitate innovation and hasten combat delivery. So that's the point. So technology, of course, but technologies are going nowhere without these other three pieces: innovation, entrepreneurship, and these cultural transitions. So unless this happens, and more critically, technology will be in corridors here, in laboratories there, they will not reach where it matters most, the squadron company fight. And if it is not going to go to the squadron company fight, we will always be lag. And the other point is that in the global strategic military theaters of competition, conflict, and war, so it is not only war, but also conflict, competition. The first island chain today, there's no war. But operational ascendancy is being established through a maze of technologies. So theaters where the whole pieces have come together, technology delivery has been amazing, with game-changing impact on combat outcome. And those flows are really appreciated not by generals, admirals, and air marshals, but by the soldiers, sailors, and airmen on the ground. That is what technology is meant for. So the real story is the skill with which you weave technology, innovation, and entrepreneurial skills to the national security system. And that is the central challenge in India. Technology is indeed remaking war. We in India and anybody else with interest must wake up and adapt to the reality. And just to buttress this proposition, let me give you a few examples. So the best place to begin is the character of war in Ukraine. When people raise this question, but technology has not altered the basics of war, of course it hasn't. But in Ukraine, you see 3 eras of war fighting play out simultaneously. In fact, geopolitics has created this exquisite battle laboratory in Ukraine for smart militaries to extract the most valuable lessons, but they have to be studied in depth. So what are these 3 eras of war fighting? One, we see the blood and gore of trench warfare, those squadron company assaults to the last gruesome 100 yards. Russians, as an operational concept, are putting their men through virtual meat grinders, mechanical breaching of mines, so on and so forth. That has not gone anywhere. That's a reality. We also see Cold War instruments like tanks, artillery, fighter aircraft demonstrating their continued operational utility. They also haven't got anywhere. But what needs to be noted by smart militaries is that bleeding-edge, emerging critical technologies are taking both these eras to a new combat high. So drones are going through trenches, drones are penetrating tanks, and drones are strategic air power. 80% of the destruction of Ukraine's energy grid has been achieved through drone attacks. Most of them low-cost, one-way Iranian drones, a country under sanctions. So that should tell you about the asymmetric power of technology being manufactured co-jointly by Iran and Russia and Tatarstan. Now, this is the wonder of technology, and out comes strategic air power. Robotic dogs are patrolling the ground in Ukraine. Ukraine, a country without a credible navy, has leveraged crewed drones with Starlinks-enabled targeting, so you have all those LEO-based technologies, to knock the iconic Black Sea Fleet out of Sevastopol. More than 20 Russian ships have been destroyed, I'm told. And the geopolitical outcome is that the grain corridor has been opened for the world to benefit from. Look at the Houthis. Houthi attacks have largely closed the Red Sea to commercial shipping. I'm told in the first 4 months of this year, the decline in commercial shipping is by as much as 40%. Houthis have brought down 9 US MQ-9 Reapers. Houthis. They have challenged the top mission of the US Navy, which is to safeguard freedom of navigation, free and open seas. It's a direct challenge to the US Navy. So technologies are not only influencing military capacities, they are impacting geopolitical outcomes. As I said, the asymmetric power and technology. And look at how technology is influencing 2 key attributes of war fighting. And I must acknowledge this is not any original thinking. It's from a piece in the latest issue of Foreign Affairs, Total War. I would seriously recommend that you read it. It talks of, just takes 2 attributes, mass and precision. So mass, as any soldier would know, is about numerically superior forces, more material, a bigger military-industrial base, etc., etc. Now, mass was never everything, but traditionally it has established the odds in war. You take the Soviet Union, Eastern Front, World War II. The biggest navy allowed the British Empire to rule the seas. More planes empowered the Allies to bomb the Axis powers to smithereens. So there was mass. Then in the last 30, 40 years or so, we saw a turn away from mass towards precision. So Cold War militaries, such as the USA and many others followed in its wake, discovered greater effectiveness in the use of expensive advanced weapons that could strike accurately at targets all over the world. Cold War I, it is the ability to miniaturize combat power, precisionry, which makes the US defeat the Soviet military. The Soviet military was bigger in the number of tanks and so on and so forth. So it is this ability to miniaturize combating power, precisionry, which saw them edge out the Soviet Union in Cold War I. And of course, it's taken to a new high. If you recollect 31st July 2022, that MQ-9 drone strike on Al-Zawahiri, enabled by a whole swath of precision technologies. Now, all these technologies, it took them 3 decades to grow. So GPS, inertial navigation system, the seeker system, proximity fuse, the R9X missile, mission specific for precision, all driven by a strong edifice in semiconductors and microelectronics. Without that, it would not have happened. But what did it do? The message that it gave was that America will chase its enemies to distant corners of the earth. Nobody will be spared, and virtually no collateral damage. So this is what, was happening. So we moved from mass to precisionary. And I said countries chose to scale down the size of their forces, focused instead on honing their technological advantage. And therefore there was this whole talk of, downsizing militaries, also raised in the Indian context by most notably General Bipin Rawat, who really said that we must right size, so on and so forth. But it was basically the ability to prioritize precision over mass. Now, in recent times, what has been happening, these emerging modern technologies, and they are, underlying technologies in munitions, sensors, and guidance. For example, you take a drone. It is the marriage of microelectronics and explosives. Otherwise, it will not happen. It will take years to deliver. The Army has launched a project, R-track-driven project in the MCME. Let's see where it goes. But all these things are happening. And all these technologies are proliferating and becoming cheaper. So these technologies can be bought by the Americans, also by the Houthis. So that's how warfare is being democratized. Advances made in the private sector in artificial intelligence, which means without civil-military fusion, you are not going to go the path of artificial intelligence. And I was just discussing with Chintan, look at how clairvoyant the Chinese are on artificial intelligence. They say their strategic outlook is civil space, total regulation. It may be for those reasons of surveillance and all. But this is what we should note. They say in the strategic military space, for reasons of national security interest, no regulation, freewheeling. So this is the way they are moving. And if we don't adopt a similar approach in this fused manner, 15 years later we'll wake up and say, dekho, wo kahan pahunch gaye? So it all begins like this. Widening availability of sensing and communication platforms, advances in manufacturing and software which have lowered the price of key equipment. So once again you see a wide swath of technologies proliferating, lower costs. And what happens now? These technologies have intervened once again in the binary between mass and precision. And mass and precision is just one example. You read that article, there are hundreds of others. So now see what happens. Cheap commercial drones packed with sensors guide cheap commercial drones equipped with weapons. They conduct surveillance, but they also hit specific faraway targets of great value, what those expensive missiles were once doing. So you have Houthis striking Tel Aviv. You have Hezbollah's failed strike on Prime Minister Netanyahu's northern seaside residence in Caesarea. And because they are relatively inexpensive, such systems can be delivered at scale. Technologies have enabled militaries to deliver precise mass. So it's no longer choice. You can do both. Precision, but in mass. So this is the wonder of technology. These cheap drones are also attritable. They are, of course, inferior in comparison with the most advanced weapons deployed by the US or the Chinese, the F-35 Stealth or the long-range anti-ship missile DF-26. But they are more scalable than their expensive counterparts. Their unit costs are so low to make their aggregate capabilities more affordable. Look at the relative cost scalability matrix that played out on the 14th April 24, that is Operation True Promise 1, the first Iranian strike on Israel. The strike cost on Iranians, I'm told, was in the region of $80 million. The defending costs on Israel and its allies were about $1.5 billion. Now, you can defend such strikes once, twice, a couple of times, maybe not 20, 30, or 50 times. And because of AD complications, when you mix the drones and the ballistic missiles and the cruise missiles, fending off such strikes is difficult militarily. So scaling up for such cheap, attritable drone systems may therefore be a cost-effective instrument in the inventory of our offensive air power. Future battlefields will be characterized by a mix of high-end systems deployed in smaller numbers with these attritable systems deployed in far greater numbers. In fact, it's happening. US military, the Chinese, what is that, Hellscape? Paparo's Hellscape is all about this. So that raises the question, in our context, should we now have 42 fighter squadrons? Could we have 32 fighter squadrons and 10 more effective drone squadrons? Why not? These are the questions that we have to answer. So all of this also makes a case, perhaps, for a cost-effective drone missile force in the Indian context, which is attritable, which is scalable. I have just given one opportunity, but if you delve deep into these technologies and if all the other pieces come together, you can really reshape your forces. That's the point of technology. Cheaper drones also make high-end weapon systems more effective. A precise strike of mass drones can exhaust the adversary's air defenses, allowing more sophisticated but less numerous systems a better chance to penetrate and hit their targets. So drones are paving the way for follow-up lethal strikes by cruise ballistic missiles as also air-crewed platforms. So that is one point. The second point that I would like to make, and there's just two quick points I'll make, that the technology game is also becoming racy and pacey. It's extremely fast-paced. Agile, fleet-footed militaries are developing countermeasures to these new and emerging technologies with speed. Look at this. 2022, we saw the PGMs like HIMARS and the Javelins creating havoc in the war-fighting capacities of Russia. It depleted their artillery stocks. Many Russian tanks were put out of action, 2022. But by late 2023, Russians developed capacities in electronic jamming, disablement of satellite signals, less the Starlink signals, but the higher ones, that made these precision systems horribly precise. In fact, a joke. These HIMARS missiles and the Javelin missiles started missing their targets by 200, 300, 400 meters. And there are no GSQRs here, no lengthy trials. Rapid evolution, adaptation, adoption of technologies in the battlefield itself. So I'd say, as I have said many times before, the GSQR is dead. You today experiment with it on the battlefield. And therefore, there is this direct correlation between minimal bureaucracies and higher levels of technology infusion. If you do not reduce these bureaucracies, this is not going to happen. The third point is national security is a matter of talent. War, Ukraine, is of technological geniuses. Musk, Alex Karp, it's a fact. So mediocrity in the national security system will not do. And for these technologies to flow, you need high-quality talent. Allow me to make one last additional point. And this is in context of the futures. So we may be living in what historians call in-between times. Now, this is also critical. We must debate this. The sometimes long pause between when a transformation technology is demonstrated and when its promise is fully realized through widespread adaptation. So 20 years after Edison's first light bulb flickered, discovery of electricity, only 3% of the US population had electricity. So 20 years, nothing much happened. And then suddenly in a year or two, electricity was ubiquitous around the world. This is what happened. Now we are in a somewhat similar moment with regard to the AI autonomy robotics food chain. If we don't make the right decisions soon, the game is already shifting to the frontier models. In those 3 to 4 frontier models, which call $350 billion each, the only two players are China and USA. For a while, it seemed that, the trailing technologies were catching up with these frontier models, but now the gap has grown, consequent to the CHIPS Act and so on and so forth. So if we don't make the right decisions and investments now, 15 years later, we may be in a world of AI hegemony. We will still get the fruits and the products, but the game will be driven by the lead players. So this is the importance of these decisions. Just as empires rose and fell on the basis of their proficiencies in gunpowder, the steamship, and steel, AI, in my view, will transform the balance of power and determine the strategic haves and have-nots of tomorrow. Strategic military ecosystems that harness the laws of exponential change the fastest, embrace innovation with wisdom, will ascend this food chain, AI, autonomy, with speed, and challenge American technological superiority. Today, if truth be told, China is poised to be that actor. That should worry the USA, also concern India. What should also bother us is Xi's promulgation of the doctrine of civil-military fusion. If there is one metric why China leads the world, at least it leads the democracies, it is because of civil-military fusion. This cost-effective delivery of technological capacities. Years before the DIU was set up in USA, certainly decades before the IDX was conceived, Xi first spoke of civil-military fusion. And what did he do? Chinese technological companies were mandated by law to share technologies with the PLA. PLA officers were placed on corporate boards, picking technologies to invest or to ingest in the PLA and the Navy, the PLA Army and the Navy. So that's the other point we have to take, civil-military fusion. And the last point is about talent. USA has this global advantage because it has the ability to draw global talent. Satya Nadella, Chintanji, they're all going there. And these people, they create the technologies and they undergird American military power. The Chinese PhDs and postdoctorates have started returning to Beijing and Shanghai. That should worry us. Many of them are being got at rock star level pay. Our Satyendra Nadellas are not returning. And I said that national security is a game of high talent, especially in the technology field. So we also carefully need to look at this. The Indian system is one of jobs, recruitment. It still is not migrated to this business of talent identification and retention. This is another thing we need to see. And last point, this entrepreneurship which I talked of, IDEX has done wonderfully to create a new generation of startups. These startups are waiting for orders. If they are given orders, they will become those national champions that will compete in the world. What should worry us, that in our defense corridors, we see BrahMos and we see Bell. We don't see these startups. Unless these startups come in these defense corridors, the last piece of my argument, which is innovation and talent, will not really fire. So in all humility, with these initial thoughts, may I now bring in wiser men than me, Dr. Chintan Vaishnav, to make his opening remarks. Chintan, please.
A very good afternoon to everybody. It's a great distinct honor to be a part of this dialogue. I must begin by saying that I have remained an Indian national after many years of living in the United States, and as a proud Indian national. But I also must begin with a confession that I am not a defense technology expert. I am here to create a backdrop that will allow us to have more further conversation. I also must confess that I sense a great deal of interdisciplinarity, because what I'm about to say is somewhat similar to what has been said, but from a very different angle, or looking at the elephant from a very different place. What we do at Atal Innovation Mission is our job is to build India's a culture of innovation and entrepreneurship, the ecosystem of innovation and entrepreneurship for our country. Since the ecosystem word gets thrown around very liberally, let me just say the way we think about the ecosystem is that when we want to reduce the friction for an idea to become an enterprise, that in that journey, if we can reduce the friction by presence of those actors that ought to be there, interconnections between them, such that if you have a good idea, it can become an enterprise. That's the job we do. So we have a very broad canvas in that sense. Now, my presence here is relevant from my perspective, mainly because defense is one of the verticals that is the furthest ahead and has taken on many of the challenges that other sectors of our nation are yet to learn about. This may not be a surprise to you, but it's been something that really helps us, because a number of new things can be tried in this sector. So I want to motivate this conversation, something similar to what was said, through this two-dimensional plot, which is from a very famous book also, The 0 to 1 by Masters, Blake, and Thiel, where they talked about that there are two types of problems that innovations work on. There is the problem of going from 1 to n, which is basically, I know that there's a large problem or an opportunity that I need to solve. I also have a sense that given what I know from science and engineering and mathematics and so on, I have a reasonable confidence that I will be able to solve this problem by producing some technology-based solution. And I need to produce it on a certain scale. That is the x-axis, right? A lot of it is kind of copying things that you already know. A famous example in that book is China's manufacturing capabilities. They knew that what the capability they needed, and they were furious at copying it. I'll come to whether there's anything wrong or right with it or not. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. But the other axis is this intensive progress axis, which is a 0 to 1. So you know something that you need. You know that somebody else may have it, but you can't have it. And you need to invent it. And so you need to go from 0 to 1. A famous example, Silicon Valley was brought up earlier. Silicon Valley is a great example of a lot of such ideas where something that didn't exist comes into existence. That is the other axis, right? Now, if you go back to the World Development Report of the World Bank, recent report, one of the concerns that is very applicable to India is that as we develop, we don't want to get trapped into the middle income trap around $10,000-12,000. Only about 13 countries have broken through it, and World Bank's recommendation is that there are 3 phases to breaking through the middle income trap. The first phase is building infrastructure. The second phase is infusion of technology. This is technology you may have, you may know about, you can do. This is the x-axis, right? And the third is the innovation. These are things that you need, that you don't have, that you have to innovate on. That is the y-axis, right? So they think about these 3. Now, what the only point of my talk today, and which is where I'm taking this opportunity to enlist you further into IDEX-like work, for example, is that we do reasonably, we have a lot of wherewithal to do the x-axis today, the extensive progress, 1 to n axis. But we don't have, we have much less wherewithal to do the y-axis. And we need everybody to engage with doing the y-axis. That pretty much sums up my talk. I'll show you, I'll tell you why x-axis is possible. So you look at 1 to n. We have a 3-tiered system. So if you look at schools, we have now, like our office, Atal Innovation Mission, has built 10,000 tinkering labs. These are maker spaces. About 11 million students have been taught design thinking and entrepreneurship and so on. Many of them are very capable of taking on a problem and coming up with a creative solution. They are school children, but they are sensitized with this idea of not getting confined to what is being taught to them and coming up with creative solutions. So that's the first level of ecosystem. There's both rural and urban, both government and private, and so on. If you look at the slightly older kids, that is higher education, industry, etc., we have about 1,000 plus incubators. The left-hand graph shows you the number of incubators in each region. It's a heat map. The right-hand graph shows you incubators per million. If you look at the right-hand graph, it says there's about 1 incubator for every million people. In about 10 years, this number would be 10 times. That's the number Israel has, or United States has, and that's the direction in which our ecosystem is going. So there'll be access to getting from an idea to a startup, right? If you look at the number of startups, again a heat map on the left-hand side, the number of startups per states or union territories, that's a measure of number of jobs getting created, because every startup is making about 10 to 11 jobs. And the right-hand side is that same number per million. If you look at the right-hand map, and now very crudely, it shows you that it is really the lighter states from where people move to darker states because the opportunity is greater, and so on and so forth. Now, on top of this 2-tiered system, that is the school and then the higher education and industry, is where we have built IDEX, right? IDEX was built by Atal Innovation Mission. It was incubated in Atal Innovation Mission before it was given to Ministry of Defense. When we built it, there were 2 dark there were two blind spots on the value chain of defense that we wanted to overcome, right? First blind spot was we knew that we had a number of innovators because we were running national challenges. We realized that we had a Varanasi or a Kashi moment that you could throw an esoteric challenge at India's innovation ecosystem and you will find some people working on it. Like, the olden days Kashi, where it's some esoteric subject, there was always a scholar there. So we had these innovators, but they didn't know what defense needed. IDEX solved that problem. IDEX said that I'll give you problem statements from the three forces plus the defense PSUs, and you can go on and solve it. The second blind spot, the dark spot on the value chain, was that a number of people would say that I will work on it, but the defense problems are of the nature where defense is the only buyer. Am I going to get some guarantee to buy what I produce? And so we've consistently tried to work on getting to a point where if you define the requirements rigorously enough, and if somebody meets that requirement, can you give them the guarantee that I will buy so much from you? And that has helped, that has begun to really accelerate things. This is a luxury only defense has. Others don't have that luxury. Agriculture does not have that luxury. Health does not have that luxury. Defense has the luxury. So we built that 1 to N system. There are many examples. It's very highly celebrated with the Honorable Prime Minister, the Defense Minister, the Chief of DRDO, and so on. And a number of problems where we know that once the problem is stated, we know enough science and technology and mathematics to solve it, people engage and solve this problem, right? The pictures I'm showing you are actually of serial innovators who have won 5, 6, 7 contracts through IDEX. So now, what is not happening as much? 0 to 1 is not happening as much. The intensive progress piece, which, if you think about deep tech, there's a lot of conversation about deep tech. One way to understand deep tech in its most stringent form is that a deep tech startup is one where the journey of making that startup produces new knowledge. Moderna is a great example that we've all experienced recently. We knew that mRNA vaccines are possible. It was the process of creating Moderna that actually taught us how to make an mRNA vaccine. Now, the challenge with deep tech startups is that if you look at the top 100 deep tech startups of the world today, on average, they have attracted investment of $40 million in each startup. That's about 300 crore rupees. That's about 2 times the annual budget of Atal Innovation Mission. This is the magnitude that one is thinking about, right? That's the realm in which we are not yet playing. That is the realm in which there was a talk about the mass versus precision. That's the realm in which the precision is, right? And so we recently launched this scheme Aditi under IDEX, which is at 25 crore rupees, which is about $3 million. By global standards, it's a small number. By Indian standard, this is the only scheme that gives a startup up to 25 crore rupees per startup. So by Indian standards, this is a tremendous scheme. Now, the one mistake that we don't want, and people like, say, Digantara, which has made, say, AI-based space surveillance and space situational awareness, which came out of the Indian Institute of Science. These types of people are coming up in small numbers. But what my ask of this crowd in particular is that as we do Aditi, because it's a 0 to 1 scheme, we don't want to have very narrowly defined problems, because otherwise it becomes a contract manufacturing job or contract R&D job, not really a place for blue sky, something absolutely not seen before type of a scheme. This is the opportunity we are creating. We have to do a lot more of it. Final word, in terms of the two axes, the mass versus precision, is one better than the other? From our perspective, not really. You may say that I will do a lot of mass plus strategy to achieve some interesting outcomes, like it was discussed before. But at the same time, can you avoid the precision, or can you avoid 0 to 1? Possibly not. So this is the work cut out for us. Thank you very much.
So thanks a lot, Chintan. If I may just, before I invite Brigadier General Iran Ortal, just to tell you that the Army not only talks, it acts. I wonder if you know that when the Prime Minister traveled to Delaware recently, and that agreement which was signed on FABs, next generation, so on, Third iTech, the startup, got its first order from the Indian Army. That's something we must be really proud of, because that really gets the system going. And now, of course, we must, the Indian Army now, if it can do it, it must look at these startups and position them as national champions in the long run. This whole business of, L1 and all is not working in any other country. People are taking startups and companies, actively hand-holding them and positioning them. So that is something we must endeavor to do that will really boost our defense capacities. Now may I invite Brigadier General Iran Ortal, who will speak about precisionry.
Thank you, General. First, I want to thank the organization, the Indian Army, CLAWS, for having me. It's a great honor. Thank you all. I was asked, General, to speak about cyber, and then I asked to speak about PGMs, precision munitions, and you've already commented quite about it. And then I thought maybe I can integrate them both, another notion that you've came up with, integration. So let me start with cyber. The Israeli National Agency for Cybersecurity just issued its report of 2023. We had 13,500 cyber attacks on Israel in that year. Most of them, or a big portion of them, after October. 800 of them were severe attacks with real severe potential of harming infrastructure. So that's a huge amount of very severe attacks. Some of them were even tactically trying to assist the October 7th attack on our border. And I'm pretty sure that just like me, in this forum, no one has ever heard about that, because it actually had a little impact. And so my point is that while cyber threats and cybersecurity is important, it rarely has an impact of its own. Of course, it doesn't take out our security measures. But now I want to go to another thing I'm pretty sure all of you have encountered. There's a video going on in the last couple of days on social media of one of the Israeli airstrikes in Beirut. A residential building falling down very precisely into its place. I can see the noddings in the audience. So we've all seen that, and that's another trivial example of precision airstrikes that we are already used to, all of us. But I want to take a harder look at that video. Now, I can make the point of this precision strike as an example for the very hard effort that the IDFs go through to strike targets as vacant of citizens as they can be. And that's another discussion, but we are speaking of technology today, so I'll take that avenue. So there's this building falling down, and we all realize there's some guiding technology in the bomb, and of course intelligence that have made us realize that this building is a target. There were enemy operators in that building, and not just in one apartment, because otherwise you would see only the apartment goes off. So we all realize that, because most of the audience are military men. But probably another harder look would see that that apartment building was vacant of its inhabitants. So someone has issued a warning to that building. Now, it was not only a media warning. Most of the inhabitants, most of the residents have got phone calls. So someone in the IDF has also got the information of who lives in that building, their names, their personal identities, and their phone numbers. Now, I was mentioning the way this building has collapsed exactly on its place, not hitting another building around. And that was quite a tight neighborhood. Actually, not harming the people on the streets, giving us the photos, the videos of this incident. And if you know engineering, you probably know that taking a building that precisely in that way with an airstrike is not an easy thing to do. So someone in the IDF also got probably the engineering sketches of that building. Now, these are a lot of pieces of information. Some of them probably were obtained by cyber operations. Some of them were obtained maybe by real-time surveillance of drones or anything else. Not one cyber operation, because phone calls and people is one thing, and the engineering plans of the building are another thing. And that's all pretty nice, but now think about doing this operation 15, 100 times a day. And most of the targets are way more complex than that building. Some of the targets are ammo depots located deep underneath residential buildings in the middle of Beirut. Some of the targets are bunkers that are only worth hitting while enemy leaders are located in them. So there's a very narrow window of opportunity. And my point is that precision alone does not really matter so much. And cyber alone does not really matter so much. And both of them together, if you can't process the information from multiple sources, some of them gathered before the war, some of them just coming in, many sticks on the air. And if you can't process that data on time, in a timely manner, and do that in mass production manner, then you can't have a precision munitions oriented warfare. I'm trying now to put myself theoretically, I'm a military theorist, so I'm trying to put myself in the other shoe, in the other guy's shoe. What did the Iranians and Hezbollah learn from this war? I mean, they've invested hugely on precision technologies, being able to precisely attack. They have drones. They also had some successes with drones and precise attacks, but largely speaking, 200 ballistic missile salvos, all accurate, all state-of-the-art, have had little impact. And I was referring to the cyber attacks, most originated from Iran. Those have quite a little impact. So you can have a lot of technologies, but integrating them in the tactical level with cyber, with data processing AI, is really the focal point of having effective warfare in our age. Now, I have a lot of follow-on comments to your distinguished presentations. I will keep them to the other parts of the presentation. But there's an Israeli lesson too from this war. And maybe it will, I can start with that in the next round. But what we are all competing for technologies, and that's great. But in what theoretical framework are you implementing those technologies? Because we've been implicating technologies hugely in the last 20 years in a defensive way. And we've all seen that collapsing in October 7th. So it's not only racing for technologies and not only integrating it, But as a military theorist, what do we raise those technologies for? What is our theory of victory? What is the problem that we're trying to solve? That's another key question for innovation. What is the problem that we're trying to solve?
Right. So thank you, Iran. One quick question. As a military theorist, what are you going to do to Iran? Should Khamenei come out of hiding?
Well, I really don't know. I was expecting to see our retaliation strike from my airplane window. Maybe I'll get it on the way back. But I think hiding out is a good suggestion for all of us in our business, and surely for the bad guys. So.
Okay, so we move to artificial intelligence now. And before I call in Dimitri, just two quick points. See, we are talk of, future lethal, autonomous AI-enabled weapons. I'm suggesting AI is there in Ukraine. What has it done? It has already compressed the OODA loop and decision-making cycles. I mean, that's what all militaries dream of. It's happening. It is reducing target engagement cycles by an order of magnitude. So I'm a gunner, let me tell you. All my professional life, we said we will, effectively engage targets in about 30 to 35 minutes. Today, artillery engagements from start to finish, 5 minutes with these flying binoculars. These are things which are happening. Commanders are faced with a Hobson's choice. So you can do a complete surrender to AI, stay on the loop, not in the loop, and reap the benefits of faster combat cycles. Or get into the loop, intervene with the agency of AI, what they call AI in the loop, but concede operational ascendancy. What will most commanders do? They will be on the loop. There goes your safety. But it remains a very important issue. And just one quick point. For those of us who think that AI is just about technology and coding, let me draw your attention to what Henry Kissinger says. Kissinger says that AI is just 20% about coding. 80% it is about the philosophy, the strategy. Where is our strategy? It is about domain specialists, the data, all this stuff. And this line he says, in the absence of a larger philosophical view, we are letting the technologists run riot. So let's not let the technologists run riot. AI is much more than coding and technology. So with those initial remarks, we'll get the expert in, Dimitri, who will talk about AI ethics, AI safety, and allied issues, I presume. Dimitri.
Yeah, thank you. It's a huge honor to be here, and many thanks to the organizers, to our hosts. I've already learned a lot, including from this panel. I will try to also provide some useful remarks, and as it was said, I will try to address the partly ethical but mostly security issues of AI and proliferation of relevant technologies. My main focus is how emerging technologies, disruptive technologies, including AI, are affecting high-level strategic stability, nuclear deterrence, and things like that. But of course, the technology is important for tactical and operational level as well. First things first, I think we should draw, well, if not a big line, but at least a dotted line between AI used for decision-making support in, for example, command-control communications in C3, like sensor fusion, intelligence gathering and accumulation, and also AI used as a tool for onboard guidance of different munitions, including drones, including missiles, including hypersonic glide vehicles. While essentially there might be very similar concepts of AI used in these technologies, the results of their employment are different, and they have different ethical issues as well. First, on the command and control level, on decision-making support, well, it's not that new. Actually, if you look at, for example, some Russian military terminology, it used to be like the whole issue of artificial intelligence in military affairs was linked with decision-making support, and especially with decision-making support for strategic weapons, for strategic rocket forces, and so on. What is crucial these days is, given the huge amounts of data that are being gathered continuously by all sorts of sensors, all sorts of intelligence sources, it is simply impossible to process this data without supporting mechanisms on all levels. And here comes the problem. We often speak about keeping human in the loop, keeping the commander inside or outside of the loop. But if the only thing that the commander or decision maker makes is agree or disagree with what the machine tells him without diving deeper, it doesn't help much. So I think here is one of the most important things that I want to say during my presentation, is that whenever we speak about technological advancements, including AI, the crucial part is training of the personnel, training of the commanders, training of operators of these or that systems, so they will be aware how the system works. They will understand the limits of what it can do. They would understand how it comes to this or that conclusions, to this or that decision options. Because simply saying that you have a person, nothing inside that will push the button, you have a person that is in charge, is not that helpful. You need to go deeper in that regard. Another issue with this problem, and it partly relates to what was just said about cyber, is that to have good AI or AI elements, you need good data. You need good learning system for this machine. And with cyber attacks, it's quite easy to make the data being used toxic. So it comes down to the continuous checks of what data you are feeding to the machine, where you get the data from those sensors. And if you go to the level of nuclear command and control, it becomes even more important, because you can get like false positives about the adversary attack. Or alternatively, you might not see the adversary attack through your early warning system, which actually also relates to some of the things that we were told during the keynote speech by head of ISRO. He mentioned several AI applications, including so-called neural network-assisted optical acquisition of data in space. Again, it gives room to a serious vulnerabilities that can be exploited by malign actors. But nevertheless, it is impossible to stop technology, to reverse technological progress, and we will need to adapt. Again, adaptation is the ultimate tool to prevail in any conflict, no matter what technologies are being used. Coming to the tactical side, or to onboard controls of this or that weapons, the crucial thing here is that very similar problems are being solved in tactical weapons and in strategic weapons here. For example, why we need autonomous guidance for example, hypersonic glide vehicles, because it's quite hard to assure there will be continuous communication with the glider, especially when it starts to travel through the atmosphere. Of course, there are solutions to that, but you will never be sure. So it needs some level of autonomy to keep, to ensure that it will get it to its target eventually. And again, there is numerous writings on this topic. We know that numerous writings by Russian scholars, whole projects by US national labs on how to mix hypersonic and AI specifically to address the task of terminal guidance and also the avoidance of missile defenses. But if you go to tactical level, the task of crucial importance now for the Ukrainian battlefield is to find a way for drones to hit their targets under serious electronic countermeasures implemented by the adversary. Because, of course, if you use like FPV drone, if you control it all the way to the target, you all have seen these fancy videos, both from Russian and from the Ukrainian side. But you see only the successful videos. There are much more cases when FPV drones do not hit the targets because, as was just said, there are numerous options that limit the effectiveness. So, like, the solution is to get autonomous guidance, autonomous terminal guidance. Eventually, and again, this is not something new, people have been talking about it for several years and papers were written about it, eventually we might see a mix of these capabilities on strategic and tactical level. For example, if you have some sort of a hypersonic delivery vehicle which will disperse loitering munitions capable of terminal guidance over a selected area, and there is no good tool against it. We will need to, again, adapt. But AI is not like only a sword, it also can become a shield. And again, from what we know from published research, AI-assisted tools are being used, for example, to plan for dispersal of missile launchers under adversary attack. AI-assisted tools are being used to ensure that the battle orders go through under serious electronic countermeasures. And actually it was one of the first examples that I found when I started to dive deep into this topic, that yes, there are numerous writings by military scholars that, for example, for strategic rocket forces, if you implement some sort of AI-assisted communication systems, the effectiveness of orders being delivered to the launchers increases dramatically under adversary electronic countermeasures. And even if we look at the early warning situation, which I mentioned earlier, which can be tricked, again, if you have numerous sensors and you have good tools that will accumulate all the data and find solutions, then you probably will not be that vulnerable. If some of these sensors will be tricked, you have also backup data and so on. Finally, why it is so important, we've already heard about mass, and this is crucial. AI might help to reduce the reliance on mass to remove people from the battlefield. I think one of the most important takeaways from the armed conflict we are being part of right now, I mean Russian armed forces, is that you will always have casualties. You will always have your soldiers killed, no matter how hard you try to avoid it. Same is true for the adversary. The only way to limit the casualties is to disperse and to limit actually presence of people on the battlefield. While, of course, I'm not saying that eventually we will see like full-on war of robots or at least uncrewed vehicles, this is still the trend. And the reason for that is that current demographics in not all countries, but I think every country eventually will get to this demographic shift, that no country will survive the level of casualties that is compared, for example, to what we had in the Second World War and some other conflicts. It will simply ruin the country immediately. And this is my final point. Eventually, AI will replace at least some of the soldiers. Thank you.
So thank you, Dimitri. And in order to make this panel more participative, I think we'll go to the floor straight away. So if there are any questions, yeah, the gentleman here, please.
So I'm Group Captain Aram from IDSA. My question is to Dr. Chintan. So Atal Innovation is a beautiful initiative. I've been following innovations. My problem is when I talk of civil drone technology or any technology where there are critical technology gaps, these innovation initiatives are not resulting into our innovators who fill these gaps. Even when I go to incubation centers, they allow anybody to come in, but they are not synergizing it to fill the gaps which impact civil military technologies or critical vulnerabilities. Thank you.
I think that's fair. It's in a way an institutional design gap in the following sense that a lot of the incubation is a bottom-up, market-driven phenomenon. But if you go to whether a state level or the nation level, where one says we haven't done that, it's obviously necessary and also the next step in a way, partly because the one reason where one feels it we haven't yet done it is that in our experience at Atal, we've seen that an average incubator takes about 4 years to get to a steady state and in a very operational, productive state. And most of what we've created are around that. The best ones are of that vintage. And so being able to build on top of it remains that next step.
Okay, Dr. Chintan, I have a quick follow-up with you. And anybody questions, could raise your hand, please. With the mic, mic liye. So the follow-up is this. I was just thinking as you were speaking. We have these Atal tinkering missions. Now we have got a lot of experience. The IDEX system has matured. ISET is there. IndusX is there. Can we now talk of Atal, say, combat delivery missions? What I mean by that, so Ukraine, this startup called Capsula, Capsula, it goes to the warfighter and says, what do you need most? He says, I need to see through clouds and darkness. Simple. 7 months later, 7 months flat, you have a LEO system which is giving them that, and which is giving them revisit times in 20 minutes and not weeks. Just a couple of emails. Now that we have matured, why not upgrade Aditi, say 20 crores is nothing, about 50 crores, and you have got Dijantra. He's tested, matured. Do a direct delivery mission instead of tinkering mission. I mean, is this a wild thought? Or why can't it be done?
Yeah. So I think the tinkering remains mostly a mindset change type of a focus in schools. And it has been a very education-oriented.
I'm saying we are past that now.
No, that's right. That's right. I think what you are saying, it may link to the tinkering idea, but where we really need to build it is that, just like, say, healthcare, where you have the primary care, the secondary care, and tertiary care. Similarly, I think we need the incubation/acceleration, the IDEX, and then the IDEX on demand, for example, like what you're saying. One question is, who is the right person to lead it? Possibly, is it the military that's the right person to say, I'm going to, this is my need, let's come together, let's deliver it. Is that how you think about it?
All of us together in a week's time, fortnight's time. But I think it is sort of...
We're definitely getting to that point where...
And we should seriously hike this amount for Aditi. National security is expensive business. 20 crores, that's just a plea, but you must seriously consider.
Many of us must write about it. There needs to be a public pressure about it. Today, when
we've begun the pressure here now.
Because when you see a scheme like Aditi go around for interministerial, people even question 25 crores. It's really people like Atal who stand up and say 25 is nothing. Just say yes and get on with it.
All right. Thank you. So there's a question there. Yeah, please.
Hello.
Yeah.
So my question to Brigadier
Just identify yourself, please. Just identify yourself.
My name is Janmesh Singh, and my question to Brigadier General Aranta. Sir, Israel is known for its precision and strikes. So, but nowadays that drones are coming from southern Lebanon and increasingly towards the PM house. How it is possible that Israel is not able to detect that they attacked on the PM house? So please.
Thank you for that question. Now, I can answer that in the very technical level and explain why low-flying, slow-flying drones are such a difficult tactical problem. But actually, Danish, can we have the slide that I've prepared? Actually, it's a very good question because I have a very good slide that can maybe take a broader view of what you ask. Oh, thank you. So, in this slide we can see 3 waves of modern warfare following 3 initial waves of technology. First, second, third industrial age revolutions. And Now, the question is, referring to drones, where do you think drones are on this slide? But I'll further try to explain what I'm trying to say in this slide. Let's go to the second column. The second column is the time where tanks, radios, and airplanes, mechanical warfare, has actually solved the crisis of warfare from the previous age, where firepower made warfare get stuck in the trenches. And no movement in the battlefield was enabled. So tanks and radios have solved that. But they did not just solve that. I was not referring to theory of victory for nothing. The French and the Brits had more tanks, more airplanes, and better ones in May 1940 in the Battle of France than the Wehrmacht did. But the Wehrmacht have realized that a precise integration of those same technologies can enable maneuver warfare and therefore defeat the firepower. Now we are all in the third column. We've been using new technologies, emerging technologies from the 90s, precision munitions and sensors, basically, and communications to integrate them. We were using them for targeting. I was describing our targeting factory in the IDF just a few minutes earlier. And now I'm going back to your question about drones. Do we see drones as another technology of the third column, or do we see it as a new way of warfare? That depends on you. Do we think tanks are a new way of warfare, or just better technologies to do the last war? I will preach for the utilization of the fourth industrial age technologies, AIs, automation. Automation means drones, it means everything. I will preach to not just using them to enhance our current standoff targeting procedures. I would urge us to see them as an opportunity to take over the same problem that our ancestors had in the 1930s and 40s. Because what happened is that in the last 3 decades, we've all made each other into a stalemate, because firepower, again, precision munitions and sensors made maneuverability impossible in the battlefield. So drones can be a better way to target the other guy. That's what we all do right now in Ukraine, in Lebanon, in Gaza. But my urge will be to figure out how this integration of new technologies can enable us to regain maneuverability in the battlefield. And the question is therefore not how to just better target, but how to suppress the other guy's fire. So coming back to that drone, my puzzle will not be just how can I identify and intercept it. There's an CSIS research I love to quote. They say, you will never have enough interceptors just to sit and play catch. My question will be, how can I suppress the entity firing it? How can I locate earlier the man in charge, the man flying, not just with intelligence, but with real-time capabilities? Or let's put it in much
right,
more...
Iran,
Yeah.
for reasons of time.
That will be my closing remark. How can I say suppress artillery fire in Ukraine? Better accuracy, better rapidly, but basically have a much enhanced anti-battery fire system.
All right, we'll move to the next question.
Hello, may I, sir?
Yeah, where are you?
Here. Hello, May I, sir?
Oh, yes, yes.
Firstly, compliments to the chair. As always, you are the best, sir. Taking a lead from the book, Battle Before the Wars, I actually wanted to ask a question to the Brigadier General. But as a student of military science, I think all of us would do well if we cull out the selected points in what has happened in past century and a half. I think the biggest threat in the world order today in military science is getting surprised. 9/11 happened, the USA didn't know. 7th October happened, despite a formidable army, the best of the technologies that the Israel IDF had, you didn't come to know about it. Hezbollah, despite all its claim, they were still surprised by the pager attack and the ICOM attack. And many more things are actually around the corner. Many things can happen. In the morning, we spoke about weaponization of the neurosciences. Multi-domain factors are coming in. My question to the entire panel is, can the convergence of the technology and security be oriented towards preventing this particular dimension, which is actually causing lots of disorder and disarray in the 21st century?
Okay, thank you. Dimitri, like to take that on?
Okay, let me start. Short answer is no. There will always be surprises. Unfortunately, it's like a hard world we live in. But the long answer would be that, well, none of these surprises came out of nowhere. There were quite a number of trends that led to what happened. So, and while I was listening to this idea about enhanced counter-battery fires and destroying the adversary fires before they're fired, I immediately thought of, again, coming back to a higher scale, to strategic stability. It's basically the whole issue of counterforce capabilities and left-of-launch missile defense strategies, which make sense in a vacuum, but your adversary always have a vote. And it leads to an extremely destabilizing situation. And when somehow you expect your adversary to come up with his surprise, of a kind that was just explained, it leads to a decision to have a first strike. I think that many of those surprises that we've seen, they were on the table by these or that terrorists long before the attack was carried out, but then they see an opportunity, and that's what they do.
All right, so I think we are running out of time. So I'll just, one question I wanted to pose to Dimitri or Iran, and this is not an original question, this is Yuval Harari from the Nexus. But he raises a very significant point. This is geopolitics and technology. He says Cold War I was about the Iron Curtain. Iron Curtain based on ideological differences. He says Cold War II, which is underway, will be about the Silicon Curtain of codes and chips determined by technological proficiencies. And he says, as he sees it, the Silicon Curtain is already being set up. And we are heading for two rivalrous digital empires, two different worldviews, two information systems who don't communicate, who don't speak to each other. Because they don't communicate, they don't speak to each other, they are incapable of regulating the explosive power of AI. So AI is exploding autonomously, the orders are fighting amongst themselves. He says we may have a Silicon Curtain between two sets of humans, CRIC or China-led and USA West-led, one set there and one between us and our AI overlords, AI algorithms which are beyond our control. He says this is the beginning of an empire of artificial intelligence, a set of unfathomable algorithms that rule the world. Now, both of you, if you can distinguish or put apart the hype from the reality.
Well, General, it's a huge question. Unfortunately, us in Israel, we don't have the privilege of Cold Wars. So maybe Dimitri will be better suited to answer that.
What about Dimitri? You're a master of the Cold Wars.
Well, as it is two questions, first I think the silicon curtain between different technological empires, it will be not a curtain. It will be like there will be a sort of a balkanization, if I may, of the whole technological area, and there will be a lot of different centers. This curtain would be penetratable. It will be not really hard, but yes, it looks like there will be different sets of technologies, of software, of social networks, and it leads to the fact that there will be less and less empathy between the people who are on different sides, which is quite a negative trend. On the curtain between us and our machines, well, as actually someone from South Asia once said at an event about autonomy and AI, that humans became the essence of our animal world on our planet, not to give up it to some machine. So I think it will not happen. We will still retain controls. Although one of the ways, or the only way to do it is to continuously train ourselves to understand what is going on in this or that technology.
Well, I think we run out of time, so just allow me to sum up with two concluding thoughts, just about 60 seconds more. So the first is this, that, and this is also a quote from somebody, I don't quite recall who, but a very important quote, which says that people who only understand facts will always take orders from those that understand and master stories. So the physicist will always report to an Ayatollah, an ISRO scientist to a politician, NASA to Donald Trump or Kamala Harris. So the real challenge is, how do we spin good technological stories? Master the mythology of technologies. So I think India has to look at that too. It's just not, or all of us have to look at that too. And the final thought is, of course, in the context of India, I think we have all the talent, we are well poised, we must embrace the technological challenge with all the opportunities that lie before us, with wisdom, alacrity and thought. We really need to do this, because I think in many ways it's India's moment, Amrit Kal and all that. One thing which will really take us up the ladder is technology. And the fear is also real, because if we don't act, because history is replete with the remains of empires that were imprisoned by status quo and habit, and they ended up biting the dust. So that's, I think, the true challenge before India. Thank you once again, the Chief, Claus, everybody else, my panelists. You've been a wonderful set of people, and this great post-lunch audience. You're the real serious guys. The pretenders have had a good lunch and left. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Can we have a loud round of applause, ladies and gentlemen? Some eye-opening perspectives, and it's interesting to see how the entire content was tailored so beautifully, while you managed to stitch those thoughts so well for us, sir. Thank you so much. That being said, yes, ladies and gentlemen, we have the inspiring presence of Chief of the Army Staff, General Upendra Dwivedi, Param Vishesh Seva Medal, Ati Vishesh Seva Medal. Sir, I'd like to humbly please invite you on stage to felicitate our phenomenal speakers here for this wonderful session. Firstly, sir, I request you to please felicitate Lieutenant General Raj Shukla. We need to have a special round of applause there for our session chair, Lieutenant General Raj Shukla. I now request you, sir, to please felicitate Dr. Chintan Vaishnav. We managed to gather some very interesting data points from Dr. Chintan Vaishnav. Thank you very much, sir. I now request you, sir, to please felicitate Brigadier General Eran Otal. And, sir, I now request you to please felicitate Mr. Dimitri Stefanovic. We managed to gather some really crisp and to-the-point thoughts from all of our speakers. I now request you, sir, to also please join our speakers for a group photograph. Thank you, sir, and thank you to all of our panelists. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, let me inform you, we are not breaking as yet because we will get to enjoy the tea and coffee after our next session directly. So I'm going to request all of you to please continue being seated so that we can give a quick makeover to the stage and set the stage for our next session. I'd like to request all of you to please be seated. Please note that the next topic will be absolutely groundbreaking because it's all about the groundbreakers. So I'm going to request all of you to please be seated. In a short while, we'll get the next session started.
The world today is changing fast. Yet some things prevail stronger than change. Wisdom prevails. Wisdom guides. It leads the way and shows what's right. Blessed by the wisdom of the ancient philosopher Chanakya, a strategist with a keen eye for defense. The Indian Army and Claws is back with its